Hello, I'm SA, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
In 1877, Ludwig Boltzmann published on the relation between the second law of thermodynamics and probability calculus, a paper that irrevocably altered our comprehension of thermodynamics. Prior to Boltzmann's breakthrough, the second law, primarily articulated by Rudolf Clausius, asserted that the entropy of an isolated system invariably increases or, at best, remains constant. Clausius encapsulated this principle with the concise statement, "The entropy of the universe tends to a maximum." This deterministic view, however, presented a perplexing conflict with the foundational laws of Newtonian mechanics, which are inherently time-reversible. Specifically, given the equations of motion, momentum inversions show that any physically possible process can proceed equally well forward or backward in time. If collisions of fundamental particles proceed one way, they can proceed equally well in reverse according to Newtonian mechanics. Boltzmann proposed a revolutionary resolution to this apparent paradox. He posited that entropy is not an absolute, immutable property of a system, but instead represents a measure of the probability of that system occupying a particular macroscopic state, or macrostate. Each macrostate corresponds to a vast number of possible microscopic configurations, or microstates. For example, consider a gas occupying one half of a container. Molecules are free to move around in the contained and assume any distribution of positions and velocities. Over time, the gas will diffuse to fill the container evenly, since there are more microstates corresponding to an even distribution than to the initial half-container configuration. Boltzmann then embarked on a combinatorial analysis to determine the most probable macrostate. This approach culminated in his celebrated entropy formula S equals K log W, where S denotes entropy, K represents Boltzmann's constant, and W signifies the number of microstates consistent with a given macrostate. This equation provides a statistical interpretation of entropy, forging an explicit link between entropy and probability. Boltzmann's constant K serves as a conversion factor between macroscopic units of energy and temperature, and the microscopic counting of Boltzmann's thinking was significantly influenced by James Clerk Maxwell's earlier work on velocity distributions in gases. Maxwell demonstrated that the distribution of molecular speeds in a gas follows a specific statistical pattern. Boltzmann extended this statistical perspective to encompass the very nature of entropy, implying an inherent randomness at the microscopic level underlies macroscopic thermodynamic behavior. As a tangible illustration of his theory, Boltzmann elucidated the diffusion of gases. He demonstrated that the propensity for gases to mix arises directly from the higher probability associated with mixed states. The number of microstates corresponding to a homogeneous mixture of gases far surpasses the number of microstates corresponding to separated, unmixed gases. Thus, the second law emerges as a statistical imperative. Gases intermix with each other due to the overwhelming probability that they'd. Boltzmann's groundbreaking ideas met with considerable resistance from the scientific community. Prominent physicists, including Joseph Loschmidt and Ernst Zermelo, raised formidable objections. Loschmidt formulated the reversibility paradox, arguing that if a system evolves from a state A to a state B, then, owing to the time reversibility of microscopic dynamics, it should equally be able to evolve from state B back to state A. This, untended, contradicts the second law's assertion of perpetual entropy. Zermelo introduced the recurrence paradox, invoking Poincaré's recurrence theorem. This theorem states that any isolated system will, after a sufficiently long period, eventually return to a state arbitrarily close to its initial state. Zermelo argued that this recurrence contradicts the second law's unidirectional arrow of time implied by entropy increase. These critiques challenged the very foundations of Boltzmann's statistical interpretation. Beyond the immediate scientific debates, Boltzmann's work carried profound philosophical implications. His probabilistic interpretation stands in stark contrast to deterministic views of nature, which posit that all events are, in principle, predictable if one possesses complete knowledge of the initial conditions. Boltzmann's probabilistic approach suggests an inherent uncertainty, a departure from the Laplacian ideal of a clockwork universe. The specific mathematical invention within Boltzmann's 1877 paper lies in his combinatorial approach to calculating the probability of macrostates, coupled with his definition of entropy in terms of microstates, explicitly embodied in the equation S equals K log W. This equation marks a pivotal moment in the history of physics, providing a bridge between the microscopic world of atoms and molecules and the macroscopic world of thermodynamics. The equation gives precise mathematical expression to the hitherto obscure concept of entropy, Relating it directly to the number of microscopic states, Boltzmann's combinatorial approach allowed him to quantify the probability of observing a system in a particular macrostate, revolutionizing the way physicists understood thermal equilibrium and irreversible processes. This was a paradigm shift from viewing entropy as a mere empirical observation to understanding it as a fundamental consequence of statistical mechanics. The significance of Boltzmann's contribution extends far beyond its immediate impact on thermodynamics, fundamentally altering our understanding of the deep connection between microscopic and macroscopic phenomena. Boltzmann's 1877 treatise on the relation between the second law of thermodynamics and probability calculus faced immediate and substantive criticism. Foremost among these were Loschmidt's reversibility paradox and Zermelo's recurrence paradox. Loschmidt's paradox, articulated in 1876, challenged the temporal asymmetry implied by the second law. The argument ran thus: if a system evolves from microstate A to microstate B, governed by time-reversible laws, then a time-reversed evolution should permit the system to return from microstate B to microstate A. This raised a fundamental question: how can irreversible macroscopic behavior emerge from reversible microscopic dynamics? Zermelo's recurrence paradox, arising from Poincaré's recurrence theorem, presented a different challenge. Poincaré's theorem states that a closed, bounded system will, after a sufficiently long time, return arbitrarily close to its initial state. This suggested that any decrease in entropy, as predicted by the second law, would inevitably be followed by a return to a state of lower entropy, contradicting the unidirectional arrow of time implied by the second. Boltzmann's response to these paradoxes lay in embracing the statistical interpretation of the second law. He argued that the second law governs the overwhelmingly probable behavior of systems with a vast number of particles. While individual trajectories may exhibit fluctuations that violate the second law, the probability of observing a significant, sustained decrease in entropy in a macroscopic system is exceedingly small. The timescale for Poincaré recurrence, he emphasized, is astronomically long, far exceeding the age of the universe for any realistic system. Boltzmann cleverly presented the second law as describing an overwhelmingly probable tendency, not an absolute certainty. Boltzmann presented entropy as a measure of disorder, quantified in terms of microstates. This concept found its most elegant expression in the equation S equals K log W, where S represents entropy, K is Boltzmann's constant, and W denotes the number of microstates corresponding to a given macrostate. This equation, engraved on his tombstone, connects the macroscopic property of entropy to the microscopic configuration of a system. His combinatorial approach enabled the quantification of the probability of observing a system in a given macrostate, significantly altering the understanding of thermal equilibrium and irreversible processes. Boltzmann's work impacted the field of quantum statistics. The development of quantum statistics by Satyendranath Bose and Albert Einstein, and Enrico Fermi and Paul Dirac, built upon Boltzmann's insights regarding microstate counting. A key distinction emerged: the concept of distinguishable versus indistinguishable particles. Boltzmann's original formulation implicitly assumed that particles are distinguishable. Quantum statistics, however, recognizes that identical particles are fundamentally indistinguishable. This seemingly subtle difference leads to profound consequences, altering the way microstates are counted and leading to different statistical distributions, such as the Bose-Einstein distribution for bosons, which exhibit integer spin, and the Fermi-Dirac distribution for fermions, which exhibit half integers. Josiah Willard Gibbs, deeply influenced by Boltzmann's ideas, further developed the framework of statistical mechanics through the introduction of statistical ensembles. Gibbs ensembles, which include microcanonical, canonical, and grand canonical ensembles, provide a powerful means of calculating thermodynamic properties by averaging over a collection of identical systems, each representing a possible state of the system under consideration. The concept of entropy as disorder, pioneered by Boltzmann, has permeated diverse fields. Claude Shannon, in his seminal work on information theory, adopted Boltzmann's entropy formula to define information entropy. Shannon entropy quantifies the uncertainty associated with a random variable, providing a measure of information content. This concept is central to data compression, cryptography, and communication theory. The Boltzmann distribution finds modern application in materials science. It is used to predict the equilibrium, distribution of defects in crystals, the concentration of vacancies, interstitials, and impurities in a crystalline material at a given temperature can be calculated using the Boltzmann distribution, aiding in the design and optimization of materials properties. Boltzmann's work influenced Max Planck's investigation into blackbody radiation. In his effort to derive the blackbody spectrum, Planck introduced the revolutionary idea of energy quantization. This concept, born from statistical considerations, marked a turning point in the history of physics, paving the way for the development of quantum mechanics. Einstein's work on Brownian motion, providing experimental evidence for the existence of atoms and molecules, was influenced by Boltzmann's work. Boltzmann's work on statistical mechanics provided the theoretical foundation for understanding the random motion of particles suspended in a fluid, as observed by Robert Brown. Boltzmann's ideas also possess philosophical implications regarding the nature of time and the arrow of time. His statistical interpretation of the second law suggests that the perception of a unidirectional flow of time arises from the improbable initial conditions of the universe, favouring states of lower entropy. This challenges the traditional view of time as a fundamental, symmetrical dimension, suggesting that the arrow of time is an emergent property arising from the statistical behaviour of large systems. Boltzmann's legacy endures in modern physics. His work brought a profound shift in the understanding of thermodynamics. Moving from a deterministic to a probabilistic viewpoint, his ideas underpin statistical mechanics, chaos theory, and information theory, demonstrating the enduring impact of his work on our understanding of the universe and its fundamental laws. His work is a cornerstone of thermodynamics and provides crucial insights into the behavior of complex systems.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.